All right, everybody, welcome back. We are still doing left tackles. We are still grinding through these left tackles. We are down to guys who are currently projected to be approximately second round picks, guys who are probably going to go early in that day two area. And we're going to start off with Jordan Morgan, a guy who I did have an eye on throughout much of the year. He was a Pac 12 guy, so I got to watch him a lot just naturally. And I did wonder if maybe he would end up as a guard move. I wonder if he ended up maybe moving inside to guard. At this point, I think it's somewhat less likely. He's a little too good at left tackle stuff. And I think he's built for it. It's just also about value, right? Like the left tackle is the most valuable position on the offensive line, right? So if you have a guy who can do it, that's where you want to put him. But Jordan Morgan, 23 years old when the season starts, from Arizona. Good size, kind of prototypical left tackle size almost, 6'5", 311 pounds. Arms are not ideal, 32 and 7/8, but it's workable. Almost 11-inch hands, though. He's got big hands, so if you care about that. And he's got really good testing overall. Ran a fast 40, great 10-yard split. Broad was big. The vertical was whatever, but the testing overall was good. And pretty much every big board has him in the first half of the second round. Draft Network has him on the last pick of the first, so there is one big board that has him in the first. But the aggregate puts him at the very top of round 3, 35th. So that's where we're projecting it. 2 really good years for Arizona. And it also kind of feels like his work job is a little bit harder compared to some of these other guys. If you're in a spread offense where the quarterback is getting the ball out in an instant, which some of these guys are, it's easier to protect your quarterback than it is if you are running a more traditional offense where the quarterback actually makes reads, goes through progressions, and Arizona's a little bit more like that. So Jordan Morgan, he's allowed 3 sacks, 3 hits, and 23 hurries over the last 2 years, which doesn't sound as good as these other guys. In context, though, I think it's probably about as good. So, really good athlete for the left tackle spot. He's going to be able to do the stuff you need him to do athletically in the modern NFL. He's got really, really good hands. He's got really strong punches, uses his hands really well when engaging with defensive linemen, just sticking in front of him, mirroring, not allowing him to take the battle over with his hands. He's strong enough to withstand a bull rush as well. You're not going to be able to just run him over. He does anchor down pretty well. He's got great footwork when shuffling back and forth. His lateral agility is on point. You're not going to get around him, even though his arms are a little bit on the shorter side. Really hard to get around. Really hard to beat with speed. He's quick out of his stance as well. You're not going to get the jump on him, which is going to be important because there are some physical limitations here that he has to work to overcome. Also, he proved at Arizona that he can handle his zone blocking scheme. He can play in space. He can pull block. He can hit blocks in space. He can hit down blocks. He can hit backside blocks. He can do that stuff. So you're not just getting an athlete who doesn't understand how to do it. No, he can do it. There is a little bit of over aggression in his game, I think you could say, with Jordan Morgan. You see this often with when they're engaging in contact with a defender. Do they come in balanced? Do they come in like with their, body straight and all lined up? Or are they bending at the waist because they're so eager to engage in contact and putting themselves in a position to maybe get countered? So he does do the bending at the waist stuff a little bit. Gonna have to get worked out of his game a little bit. Doesn't sink his hips the way you would like another guy who needs to figure out leverage. You can get away with it more in college because you're going to be stronger than a lot of guys you go up against regardless, but in the NFL, if you don't learn how to play with leverage, you're going to have a really hard time sticking around. So got to learn how to sink his hips. And while his punches are good and his hands are good, sometimes they get a little bit wide, sometimes they get a little bit low. His hand placement on the opponent seems a little bit sloppy. It leaves him vulnerable. Like they call it leaving your chest open and allowing the defender to get into your chest and take control of the rep. So his hand placement as a player needs fine tuning. But overall, these are all things that should be relatively fixable, right? He's not super tall. It's not like he loses leverage because he's really, really tall. He loses it because he doesn't understand how to play with leverage yet. So, really talented left tackle prospect. Again, I thought about him as a guard, but it's kind of like Troy Fatano. It probably won't happen. I don't know if it's a great fit at guard anyway, by the way. It's not even like a Fatanu thing, where Fatanu, I think, would be a great guard. I don't know about Jordan Morgan, but Morgan's good enough to play left tackle in the NFL. So he doesn't have the upside of the guys in the previous video. The guys in the previous video could be all pros easily because they have everything. They're massive. They have long arms. They have athleticism on top of it. You look at this guy physically; he just looks a little bit smaller. He's a little bit shorter, shorter arms. He's not the physical specimen of Alt or Fashanu, but he's a really good left tackle prospect. I can't imagine him being anything other than really, really good. And as long as you get good coaching in on him, you're not going to have a problem with Jordan Morgan. So high second, if not a low first round pick, honestly. And I kind of put it as a coin flip between early day 2 or late day 1. I like him a little bit more than most of the big boards, just a little bit, not a lot. I'm not going to go too far with it, but pretty good. So, by the way, it was 25 hurries over the last 2 years. Okay, so that's Jordan Morgan. Next guy who's currently being mocked in the second is Kingsley Suamataia, BYU Cougar, another one of the BYU guys, and he comes in with a lot that you like. 21 years old, so a lot of growth in front of him. Should be able to improve massively over the next couple years. Good size. He's 6'5", but he's a little more firmly built than Morgan. 326, so he's got like 15 pounds on Morgan. 34 and a quarter inch arms, so decent arm length. Nice big hands, 10 and 5/8. Pretty good athletic scores as well. Great 40, really good 10-yard split, really good broad. Bench press was awesome. The vert was the only thing that was a little bit low, but overall, he tested great. He's a great athlete. The big boards mostly put him in the second. The Draft Network loves him. They put him in the mid-first, actually, but he seems like a early second guy overall. The performance last year was not stellar. Like, he was definitely looking to take a step forward in 2023, and he didn't. He actually regressed. Allowed 13 QB pressures total, including 2 sacks. Previous year, he allowed 0 sacks and only 11 quarterback pressures, so there was definitely a little bit of a step back, which is probably why he didn't vault himself up into the early first round, honestly. He was on that track, and it just didn't happen. But the potential still remains. He's got a phenomenal combination of size and athletic prowess. I mean, to be 326 pounds running this 40, you got to be a little bit of a superhuman to pull that off. So he's a great athlete for a guy his size. He's a very powerful run blocker as well. He plays with power. He can anchor down really, really well. He can also clear a little bit of space as a drive blocker, which some of these other guys don't necessarily bring to the table. He's got heavy hands. It hits hard with his hands, really good at using his hands to slow momentum. His movement skills are great. He can play in space. He can be a peel back blocker. He can be a lead blocker, a pull blocker. He can do all this stuff. He's a really good move blocker. He shuffles fluidly when mirroring in pass rush. Really good at staying in front of speedy edge rushers. And he understands more complex pressure stuff as well. He understands, the guy in front of me isn't coming. This guy's coming. I got to go pick that guy up, or the line needs to shift this way, or I need to go here. I got to pick up this blitz. So there's some really nice stuff with Kingsley, and I think that the potential for him to be a superstar in this league is there. Unlike some of the previous guys, however, it feels like there's a little bit of a downside. There feels like there's maybe a little bit of a lower floor compared to these other guys. Leverage, also another guy. He's not tall, so it's fixable totally, but leverage is a little bit of an issue for him. He plays standing straight up a lot. Not good. Can't get away with that in the NFL. His punches sometimes whiff. Like, he's got great punches, but sometimes he just misses. He doesn't put them in the right spot. So you got to figure that's something that can be fixable, though. And he's very eager. He's a very eager player. He's very aggressive, and sometimes he loses balance because of it. He'll throw himself into an engagement off balance, and he'll put himself in a bad spot that he didn't need to because he was just so eager to get in there. All right, so Suamataia, that's all fixable, right? But who knows if it will be fixed. He is a little bit on the raw side compared to some of these other guys, I think. You're drafting him more on traits than you are on production, especially with how he played in 2023. It wasn't that good. So he's like a slightly bigger version of Jordan Morgan. The question is, do you want Jordan Morgan, who is a little bit more of a sure thing, to be really good, or do you want Kingsley Suamataia, who could be a waste, but also I think has higher upside? And generally speaking, I'm about the upside. So I look at this as like he's a slightly bigger version of Jordan Morgan. I'm high on him. I think the issues are fixable. As long as you trust your coaching, I would take him in the first round personally. I think he's a first round guy. He's only 21. These things should get fixed. So why wouldn't I bet on my coaching staff? If I don't believe in them to develop this guy, then I probably shouldn't have them hired on my team. So I really like Suamataia. I think he's a really good prospect. I think he belongs in the top 32 personally. I think he's a little bit better than Jordan Morgan, but I can understand why Morgan's generally considered better. He's more of a sure thing. But again, are we trying to get guys who are good, or are we trying to get guys who are great, even if that greatness comes at risk? So, like Kingsley. Okay. See you guys later. Go Hawks. Let me know what you think down below of these two. Moving on to the third round, moving through these left tackle prospects. See you guys soon.